Hey guys, thanks for watching. The best way to support the show is to go into the description as well as the pinned comment. There is a locals, there's a Patreon with daily behind the scenes videos. There's also a PayPal, a Cash App, and a Buy Me a Coffee. All good ways to support. Most of you guys support in the $3 to $5 a month, which is amazing. The big three revenue streams are YouTube, Rumble, and Spotify, and those can and will fluctuate wildly and sometimes outright cancel me. The show needs about $5,000 a month to run. Right now, it's making about $1,500 from fans alone. I want to get that up to 5,000 a month so that the big three can go pound sand and the show can remain independent. The show does take money. It's just what it is. If you can only donate $1 a month, that is awesome. So if you could, please think about it. Go in there. If you want something else, there's also Sport Drink. That link is in the description. You can use promo code TPC for 10% off or promo code Tommy's Podcast, as well as Heaven's Harvest Prepper Food. And if you can't do any of that, I would ask that you go to ARC, the Association for the Recovery of Children. It's a group of special forces guys from 1993 till now, and they rescue about 10 or 11 kids every single year who are sex trafficked. They physically go and rescue them. So if you have to support one thing, I'd ask that you please support them. They are literally saving the lives of children. Um, Thank you so much. And come on, recording on Saturday, March 21st, 2026 at 10:07 a.m. Eastern Time with Colonel Watkins, Colonel Murray, and of course the good general who is behind all operations, that he is the Illuminati. And it's all, I'm going to keep repeating the joke I was like, hey, can we do a show tomorrow? And you're like, going on vacation. I was like, oh, cool. He's like, got to get it in before the war starts. And I was like, so cryptic text. And like, 9 hours later, we started bombing like Tehran or something. And I was like, the fuck is that all about? And yeah, so that's my, I think we joked about right, the what is it, the Pentagon, the pizza index and all that.
Yeah.
I have a much more accurate index. Is the general on a beach? If he's on a beach drinking, get to the bunker. If he's anywhere else, it's all Gucci. Don't worry about it. Everything's
Okay,
Uh,
fine.
I'm going to throw this out here
Yeah.
because Alan Dulles was already always out of town when shit went down.
Fucking hell. Yeah, of course.
yeah. yeah. Yeah, but I try to help my friends. So let's just settle down, okay?
Um,
Oh,
but yeah, so I mean, since we've last spoken, it seems to be a pretty clear and pretty radical divide surrounding Joe Kent that above all
It's
else, does
visceral.
yeah, it's and whether or not that it was the intention, like, man, is that not a beneficial splitting and causing of infight? And I've met Joe Kent in 2021. I had him on my podcast when I was on Rumble with less than 1,000 subscribers. Like, he's always been cool to me. I was able to get fundraisers thrown from him. I knew him, like, he still texts me and stuff. And so obviously I'm impartial to him, but I get that this is bigger than, hey, he's my friend. Like, there does seem to be a pretty radical divide down the middle, and whether or not this was the plan or it's just an organic spin-off, man, that benefits anyone outside because this is causing radical infighting.
It means he was over target, right?
Think
I
so?
mean, look, Joe Kent's a good guy.
Yeah.
You've crossed paths with him, had him on the show. I've crossed paths with him a few times. I don't know him as well as you do, but the dude did 11 combat tours.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, 11 combat tours, and he knows what he's talking about. He's counter terrorism. Come on.
But the first fundraiser I was able to get thrown for him, I remember we're there, and by the way, the fundraiser wasn't a lot of people. It was like 10 people in Bumblefuck, Maryland. And he came there, and the first thing I thought was, "Fuck this guy," because he's also tall. I mean, he's handsome, but when I saw him, he was tall. Got so angry. I was like, he like waved at me, and I was like, "Fuck you, Joe." And like, but like, we were there, and but we were talking, of course, and would do the dinner thing and whatever, all the fundraising shit, and I mean, you could immediately see him talking, and just the way he worded it, like Trump wanted me in his second administration. Obviously, that didn't happen because it was stolen, but. I think he was like Trump was there or Trump contacted him. And he just, he's like, when I went, and didn't even say like the coffin. He's like, when I went and received Shannon's remains. And it's just like, dude, this is real. This is a real dude. And to play devil's advocate, that no, that doesn't make you immune from criticism. Sure. I'm not going to do the whole, he can't be touched because that's also not good. But the idea that this guy is somehow torching and torpedoing Trump or the people coming out and saying, I think somebody, and then I'll stop talking, but somebody made a thing like, oh, he's never been against endless wars. And I retweeted a list of all the interviews I've done with him. And because it's Zoom on the bottom right hand corner, it's got day, month, year, hour, minute, second, going back to 2021. And it always circles back to whose sons and daughters are we sending to their death? How much money is going there that is not going here? And what is the ultimate value of this? He's always been saying that. And so I look at it with my limited experience with him and I go, to me, he is still saying his message. It just happens to be on a global scale now. So I'm going to shut up and let Colonel or General get in here.
Well, I find all of this interesting from a much higher. I don't know him. I don't know him from Adam. But if you look at this from my perspective in how these operations work, if what I find very interesting is people like to compare, to your point, his words from before and his words sitting in a government position. You actually can't conflate those two. So you have Joe Kent, the warrior, the deployed guy, boots on the ground, with the amount of intelligence that he has available to him to carry out that operation, most of which is created in order to achieve an objective that the CIA has orchestrated, and in my experience. So that's Joe Kent while he's doing his military duty. You have then Joe Kent, the politician, or politician wannabe. And that's a very interesting kind of juxtaposition from his experience. And then you have Joe Kent in the position of the counterterrorism chief with access to intelligence that is under the DNI, which is a completely different set of intelligence because it's no longer being curated by the CIA, because she moved that intelligence estimate function out of the CIA and into the Director of National Intelligence. I don't know if people know that. So he's now getting a completely different set of intelligence pieces of information. And he has to make his own assessment based on that information. So you can't conflate the guy boots on the ground and his impression of things, the congressional candidates guy with no access to intelligence position on things, and his position that he just currently resigned from. You have completely different sets of information in each of those positions. And to your point, he's consistently been on his own personal message through all of those things as not wanting to go to needless, endless wars. I think that's consistent about, if you're not a neocon, that's consistent across all of the people that's ever been in the military and most of the American people who have read any piece of history about how we've been manipulated into needless, endless wars since the end of 1945. So I don't find any inconsistencies in his position based on the data that he would have had in each of those points. And I think people like to kind of meld that all together and then try to pick one soundbite out and said, oh, he said this and now he's saying this. But in a broader perspective, I think this, I see this in line with something that has to happen. There has to be an understanding in the United States of this global Zionist movement. And I think that for whatever reason, and I'm not saying it's premeditated or anything else, it is forcing a conversation that has to happen.
and
Okay.
and obviously for everybody listening, we are all supporting Joe Kent. So if you're saying, oh, it's just a circle jerk, yes, it is, and go whatever. But I mean, just to throw in one more little piece is back in 2020 when I first interviewed him, he's like, by the way, you might not want to put this up on YouTube because I'm going to talk about how the 2020 election was stolen. I was like, that's awesome because I'm banned from YouTube. And then like the same thing with COVID. He was like, I'm going to talk about how this is unconstitutional and how you're taking war fighters out. And I was like, that's great because I'm also banned from, YouTube, iTunes, Twitter. And not only that, and I've had on, and I know these doctors very well, Dr. Malone, Dr. McCullough, they all agreed to come on with him to help him for his campaign because obviously he doesn't have the scientific background to explain why not to do this. Dr. Malone and Dr. McCall, these guys with millions of subscribers, these are guys that have been on Rogan multiple times. And I showed him Joe Kent, told him his story, check him out. And without batting an eye, they're all like, I would love to come on with him. Even Gordon Chang, who's been, beating the China's coming there for 50 years, he came on with Kent because even Kent was talking about how to be strong without being pulled into this thing. So I do get very defensive of him just because I have video audio evidence of him saying these things with the time on the bottom right hand corner, and not just me, Dr. Malone, Dr. McCullough, Gordon Chang, Brandon Weichert, who's an advisor to Space Force. These are all guys who came on and were happy to because they understood that he wasn't some, hey, defund it all, no war, but he's also not Dick Cheney, gurgling blood, I want more. It's so, again, not to keep, beating the same dead horse, but that this is who he is. And to anyone saying that this is some last minute change is it's not that it's mean or it's salacious. It's factually wrong. It's objectively wrong. And so yeah. General, you want to pop in here?
It's going to get ugly. It's going to get ugly. There is so much more to this than meets the eye. This is his resignation letter. When I got it, I took it at face value. The guy's not on board with the plan, and he's quitting honorably. This is the way you want to quit. He posted this letter online because you have to have transparency in DC, or somebody will rewrite your letter and tell everybody what you said in your letter, which won't be what you said. So I understood all those things in the first hour. And then the thing that's going to get this to a new place is then they start talking about, well, he was leaking information and he's going to be under investigation soon. And so is Tucker Carlson. And that really was raising all my eyebrows because I'm like, well, okay, hold on. So you found somebody in Washington, D.C. You found the one guy who might have leaked some information, the one person, and now it's time to go investigate that person. We can set that puzzle piece aside for just a second, but that is where this is going to get pretty damn ugly. If you go back to September 10th, when Charlie Kirk was murdered, and then in a week or so afterwards, you really, really saw deep division between CIA, FBI, and ODNI in terms of the intel community. Like most trigger pullers, Joe looked on the Charlie Kirk thing, and we all knew that what the FBI was pitching for what happened was horseshit. Soy boy with the Mauser on the rooftop. No, that is what did not happen. And now they're so confident of that theory, they won't let one camera into the courtroom or a tape recorder. But Joe understood that. Joe and Tulsi wanted to go after that and investigate it. And Kash Patel himself, who's got some interesting relationships, stood up and blocked them and said, no, you're not. This could have foreign, we have to protect foreign sources and methods, and we're not gonna allow that to be pursued. Okay, so that starts a clock, and that if you think that Joe Kent is the type of person with his background, 11 combat deployments, a lot of clandestine deployments, has seen almost the full spectrum of warfare. That this guy who really, while he may look very calm and sedate in a business suit, is an absolute animal with a gun in the proper tactical gear. If you think he's going to just go back to his office and go, well, I tried. I thought there was something there. I guess there's nothing there. If you think that that's what he did, well, then you're willing to believe a lot of things. But what I believe Joe did, and this is going to be a little speculation on my part, but I think we'll find it out, is he didn't stop looking into things. But he did go backwards and remembered that Charlie, that he had known Charlie, and Charlie back in June was there up at the White House, and they had talked about not that it wouldn't be in America's best interest to do this war. Now, I don't think Joe Kent is lamenting the loss of the Ayatollah or anything. I think where he's at is in the letter. I do think legitimately he's challenging the casus belli to go to war, and the motivations and how it came about this way. At any rate, the fact that we're going to now, with not a disinterested party, is using his organization to mount an investigation into Joe Kent. I've got a real problem with that, because Cash has got his own troubles swarming around the Charlie Kirk assassination. He's got his own troubles in problematic relationships with the country of Israel. And I think that there's such a big conflict there. Just the at the surface, if you tell me that he's going to investigate Joe Kent, does that mean we're going to be not investigating any J6, General Milley, or any of the other clowns that have intelligence problems or leaked classified problems? But this is the big one. This is the hill we're going to go assault.
Well,
this stinks, and it's going to get bigger. And this is just the start. I know from a source there is going to be a lot more to this coming down the pipe.
That's a very salient point, because the reality is the FBI can't investigate anybody.
Steve, your mic again.
It's all about me. Come on.
I know it's about you. Can you get your mic?
It's totally about me. How's that? Is that better?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
way better.
Sorry, it's Zoom. Sorry. I will say this, because that's a very salient point. The FBI can't investigate anybody related to Epstein. They can't investigate, criminal referrals for Fauci or anybody else related to COVID. They can't investigate any malfeasance related to treason from 2016 on with the Obama administration, but they can go after a political dissident that opposes the war. I mean, the other tell in all of this is that they're not broadcasting any of the casualties from the current conflict. They're not even talking about it. There's no embedded reporters. There's no mention of any combat losses whatsoever. Does that strike you as odd? I mean, if you watch the video that I posted yesterday, this guy, and this relates to all of this, that he's on X. This guy is a data guy. He put into AI, his own AI, which isn't tainted with any liberal bias or anything else. He put in executive orders. He put in NGO documentation. He put in current contracts, DOD or DOW contracts, and then he put in tertiary information related to bills that have been passed. And what the AI spit out on the other side was astonishing. Iran is a catalyst for a reset. And the reset is we're going to pull out of the Middle East. And if you're Joe Kent, you see all that, you see the indications of all that, you're going to react. And what he did was give Trump the exit strategy that Trump needed a week ago. And of course, Trump doubled down, and now he's a political fugitive. And you're right, this is just the start of something big. You want to see the special forces community close ranks around this guy? Go ahead and arrest him. that's not going to end well, and that story's not going to age well.
That's what Clay said. He's like, if you want to see a bunch of fucking Spartans with a mountain of bodies close ranks,
Yeah,
yeah, and
yeah,
and they don't blindly. I've interviewed enough of them. They don't blindly love each other. A lot of them fucking hate each other.
Yeah.
They have all to a T. Joe Ken. That they're
Yeah.
all. It's yeah.
Oh yeah, they're going after their Ferris Bueller. Bad idea. Super bad idea. Big unifier.
I can't say that this is not it just seems to me to in my view bode well, actually. Not, I know everybody looks at it from the negative standpoint, but it actually is going to have a very good long-term effect from a you in in trying to muster people, um to your point, if they martyr Joe Kent politically, it is going to have the effect of um galvanizing what we are going to need to go forward. Because again, I just keep coming back to this. The embedding of the nefarious Zionism narrative of the control and all of those other things, you are going to have a method in order, number one, to expose it, and number two, to deal with it. And I just see this marching down that avenue, because now that conversation is in the forefront of so many things, and it's so revealing. You've got Laura Loomer over there losing her fucking mind, and Mark Levin acting like a wolf that found a rabbit and was able to catch it. And I think that is, again, it's like the COVID revelation. It's like, what the hell is going on in a lot of people's mind? And it makes them start questioning things. And that's the first step to go on, holy crap, this has been going on and I didn't even know it.
It is illuminating, right? We've all seen those videos of sheriffs showing up to people's doors, and it's like, we just want to ask you about these posts you made about Israel, and people are like, what the fuck is this shit, right?
Yes.
But they're kind of a flash in the pan. Not, and I know the contrary to this would be like, you're trusting the plan. That's not what I'm fucking talking about. I'm talking about what we're looking at right now with our eyes. You're seeing a lot of people go, they need to investigate this guy, this decorated, because he said very professionally, we're doing this on another country's behalf, and that happens to be Israel. And now all of a sudden the hammers are coming down. Huh. That would tell me. That would tell, again, reading Raven Rock all about the nuclear bunkers, like a lot of them, it's like, yeah, there's just like a little nondescript door near like a shack. And they're like, it's always weird how those are the ones that are plowed first during a snowstorm. You have all these hicks like, what's so important about that road? And it's like, because there's a 300,000 square foot continuity of government thing under it. And if you're nearby, you're, oh, isn't it weird how the hikers are always met by National Guard members? They're like, what is so important about that door? That's how I look at this. I'm like, nothing else.
Yeah.
Joe Ken
You
says
know,
we're not doing this on behalf of Israel, and the world is imploding on.
you
That
know,
is that's fascinating.
J. Edgar Hoover was probably one of the best gate guards for defending the deep state and controlling lives in DC who might be getting out of line. And he had a file on everybody.
Yes,
Cash Patel,
even
Cash Patel is no J. Edgar Hoover.
No, he is not.
And when I think about the mental capacity, the strategic capacity, the planning, the ability to think 3, 4, 5 moves ahead between a guy named Kent and a guy named Patel, it's not even close. It's not even close. And what I've seen about from just social media posts, whenever Cash comes under attack, he's petulant. He's not calm. He's reactive. And that when you do that, that's why I cringe when I see things like that, because it's like, okay, I kind of get who you are now. I really wish the rest of the world didn't know that about our FBI director. Same thing with the use of the private jet. The chick who is the burgeoning Nashville country star, but from somewhere else. And if you when we start to take a look, and I think there's going to be so much linkages here with the Charlie Kirk thing when this does get big and when it does blow up. I think there's a possibility that Cash has stepped into a trap, and that trap is spawned the day he told DNI, "You're not going to investigate this any further."
Regarding Kirk.
Yeah,
Nobody buys that story. No one. So
it's hapless. It's not even. Think about folks in our profession. I mean, just casually sitting there looking at the TV and watching them. It's like, oh, you couldn't. If you were going to run a sham assassination, you couldn't do better than this. Clown boy, soy boy on the roof with a Mauser that he had to take apart and put
do you
back
know how
together
hard it
again
is?
twice?
Do you know how hard it is to take a
mouth.
Mauser apart?
I do know how hard it is to take a Mauser
very
apart.
hard.
Can I interject?
Even for a guy like me that's got a bench and a gun, all the gunsmith tools to take it apart, it's still incredibly hard.
You guys took the words out of my mouth. I want to interject 2 anecdotes from this podcast. Dr. Ken Albeck, head of the Soviet Union bioweapon program. I had him on here and I was like, is COVID a bioweapon? And I was expecting this hour-long, and he's like, yeah, there was a coronavirus lab down the street. What do you think it is? And I was like, oh, it's just kind of like, that was it. And he's like the most decorated guy. I had Dale Comstock, Delta Force Ground Branch, asking about Charlie Kirk. And he's like, I know every gun upside down backwards. He goes, you cannot take apart a Mauser without a couple vice grips. And Dale is yoked. And he was like, I couldn't do that. And, Dale, being Dale, he's like, and I'm the fucking man. He's like, you can't do that. You cannot do that. Those two right there, it's just horseshit.
Well, then there's the ballistic piece. If you're going to hit something at that closer range with the 30-06, Charlie's head doesn't emit blood; it explodes. That's just the way it is. The other thing is there is a gal named I guess she's got a handle on Instagram. Her name is her handle is at Leah Files, and she does corporate intelligence work, corporate investigations, and it may be one of the presentation could be a little bit better. And me and Luongo were arguing about this back and forth the other day, and I just said I had already seen this theory about the microphone being the thing that was on him that got him. And here she is pointing out the government contract where it was purchased, and then this place where it was purchased, it was an irregular government contract, and the place where it was purchased in Tennessee blew up and was burned to the ground and killed everybody inside about a week later after that. And so I'm not saying that this is definitively the route. I am saying there is a guy named Kent who is very intelligent, who can see this stuff for his own self. He has got a lot of intel background. He's got a lot of curiosity. And this is the pathway he was starting to walk down. I mean, just from my own desktop, the day he was murdered, I was able to put some pieces together based on flight records and all kinds of other stuff. And just go look at the who's who on that security firm that was watching him. It's a mess, and it needed to be looked at. And unfortunately, when things get politically sticky, we stop looking at them and we go, nothing to see here. Well, that wasn't good enough for Joe. And now Cash has decided not to let just the simple resignation stand, which I think he's gonna wish he could go back and do this again over and over again, because now they want to attack him on the way out the door. And that was stupid. The other thing is I have never seen Trump handle a defection with as much velvet on the hammer as I did in this case. He normally will wire brush you on the way out the door and let everybody know through social media what a maggot you are. In this case, the best he could do is just call Joe weak, and that's it. Something that we're gonna have more coming out here.
So, what I find interesting about all of the stuff that you guys just said, do you picture yourself back in 1963?
Yeah.
When all of the crazy shit and people right away were going, no, that's not what happened. They tried to assassinate him in Chicago.
Yep.
There was a Secret Service guy who exposed it like in real time. And you're like, okay, well, then a few days later, they actually assassinate him. So what the hell? And oh, by the way, Jack Ruby's from the Chicago Mafia.
Right.
And so you just and people started speaking out right away. And one by one, they're killed. One by one, they're shut up, whatever. And it's not like we haven't been here before.
Mm-hmm.
And at the exact same time that all of the remaining JFK files are being released, you have this happen?
So glad you said this. So now let me ask you a question. Is it possible? I don't know what the probabilities are. Is it possible that the very quiet Tulsi Gabbard is running an op
On what?
on this whole thing?
It is
Narrow it down a little more.
extremely possible.
Blaine, pretend you're talking to somebody that looks exactly like me and who's retarded.
Okay.
Just
all right, little Georgia bullpup. Here's the thing. There's a possibility that Joe's resignation is simply part of an operation to expose deep state operations in and around the Charlie Kirk assassination and the ramp up and the run up to war, to include probably interactions that go back and forth that get us to the point of dropping bombs. There's a possibility of that, because when we look at the IC, they're all unified by one thing. They can't stand Tulsi Gabbard. And then the other thing I think you should understand is they had just about lost their crap when she was physically on site as the ballot boxes were getting rolled up into vans in Atlanta. So in the world of conspiracies, and this is not a conspiracy theory from me yet, I'm just simply putting out what I'll call conspiracy puzzle pieces. I'll say that there is a possibility that what we just got to see is a major, major step in a Tulsi Gabbard designed operation. And if you think that Tulsi and Kent don't make a great team, they do.
So also to your point, there was a even worse than Georgia, if you're on the election interference side, the fact that they had confiscated Smartmatic machines from Puerto Rico and no one knew.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's so much going on right now that most people don't put all of those pieces together. But to your point, if you have a puzzle that has not been finished and you and you can see these pieces laying on a table, and your mind immediately starts going, oh, that piece goes here, that piece goes here, that piece goes here. You can actually start seeing how all of these seemingly unrelated pieces are not unrelated.
Right. That's where I'm at.
I'm not sure I agree with that one, because all roads lead back to the FBI and DOJ for action, and they haven't done anything. That's my
point. That's my point exactly.
I see a lot of activity related to the elections, because they've raided a bunch of places here in Arizona that hasn't made the news, but we haven't seen any arrests yet. And unless she's working with somebody in the military that's actually ready to conduct a coup, I don't see anything happening. I mean, the tell in all of this was the fact that DOJ hasn't arrested Fauci. The guy took $971 million out of NIAID, and nobody batted an eye about it. Yeah, there's no malfeasance there whatsoever.
Steve, let me throw some variables at you and ask you, you're the commander in chief, how you would handle this. Okay. You have 366,000 sealed indictments. You've got all these things that have happened going back to the Fauci murder of millions of Americans and millions of people around the world. Pull that string all the way to today, all the lawfare, all the Hillary crap, the Russiagate, the stolen elections, all of it. Even in Pam Bondi's own words, when she has them, is that if we were to prosecute all the Epstein crap, 98% of the government would come down, or the government would be incapacitated. I guess Assange had said 98% of the government would come down. So if you're going to round them all up, if you're gonna do this roundup, and by the way, you have to, because if not, you're gonna face impeachment after the midterms are over. I guarantee it. What now you're the commander-in-chief. What is the process that you're going to use to go get this done, knowing that most of the agencies are modeled, ripped with deep staters that are at a treasonous level against their country? How would you go about that if that was your task today, to go get them?
Can I just insert something? When I use, because I'm a conceptual person, I use the puzzle analogy.
I do too, all the time.
You can't put a piece that goes in the middle until you build the frame and you start moving in from the edges. There is an order that these things have to happen, and you can't say nothing's happening. There's a grand jury impaneled in Fort Pierce, Florida.
Yeah.
There are things happening, and they have to happen in a sequence that is going to roll this information out on a bedrock foundation, because otherwise you will cause a civil war in the United States.
Exactly. So Steve, how would you do it? What would be your process?
There's a balance here, not just a puzzle. There's a balance between public opinion and, the public going along with this. And when you see consistently, you see no action whatsoever. Case in point, Comey, Letitia James, both brought up on charges, both indicted, no conviction. The cases fall apart because DOJ doesn't want to prosecute it. There's only so much of that you can push out to the public and say, well, it was the insurgents inside of DOJ that caused this problem. There's no intrinsic evidence that says that any of this is going on, especially when, to use your analogy, that Trump is doubling down on warp speed. He's doubling down on the fact that you got all these vaccines out on time and, pats himself on the back. Maybe that's a ruse, maybe that's not. And I would love to be wrong, but I'm, after a year of watching this, this delay. It doesn't matter how many grand juries are convened. Doesn't matter how many convictions are handed down. Doesn't matter how many indictments are handed down. Until somebody's prosecuted and perp walked, every day you erode public support. Every day you're eroding his base. And there's the diehard megas, the diehard, Trump fans, always Trumpers that are, in the camp. But you're in a time right now where you've committed a decisive action to put us into a conflict that no one wanted. 80% of the population did not want a conflict with Iran. Full stop. And the fact that you're in this position right now, this is a perfect time for them to do something that would show that there's actually something going on in indictments in process. This is a perfect time for that. And we don't see that. We see them doubling down on going after political adversaries. We see them doubling down on not prosecuting anybody from the COVID debacle. This is me saying I would slowly and tactfully tear apart the system, but I would also be prosecuting people on the front end so that people can see that there's actually something going on, because the public has waited a year. He ran on exposing the Epstein files, prosecuting the people that committed treason, prosecuting the people that committed the fraud in 2020, and none of that's happened yet. And it doesn't take a year when you have all the receipts to put together cases. I'm sorry, it just doesn't. And the fact that they were, Tulsi Gabbard handed them all the receipts from 2020 way back in, early 24. They were handed all the receipts. Literally the day she took office, she went in, and I know they had the receipts because I've talked to people on the inside that they had literally everything. They had the dual operating systems for the Smartmatic machines. And how long does it take the FBI to pull their heads out and actually go chase down some of these leads? Some of this stuff was handed to them on a silver platter. And I can tell you from working with the FBI that literally, if you have a cyber case, you literally have to hand it to them on a silver platter, so they don't have to do any investigation. They can just go roll a guy up and say, here's all the evidence we have. So what I would do, even if I'm going through all the breadcrumbs, I would still be throwing people in front of the public space that show that I'm actually doing something. Because part of this is not just dismantling the deep state, it's bringing the public along to say, yeah, we're actually doing something. And as of today, the FBI has done nothing but obfuscate, delay, and do nothing. I mean,
So
literally,
let me red team what you just said just a little bit. And
yeah, please go ahead. I mean, look, I'd love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong.
What you laid out is not wrong, but what you laid out is my red teaming would be on why this stuff did not happen that way. So if I was the bad guys and you started down that path with me and you pulled out all the receipts and you immediately started prosecuting cases and you started pulling all this stuff together, every clown boy, sharp-edged Ivy Leaguer criminal defense attorney is going to come out of the woodwork, and they're going to be backed up by these over time cooked Article 2 judges like Boasberg and others that are going to be very, very sympathetic to those criminal defense attorneys. And the game that they're going to play is not a game of, I'm going to get all these guys off the hook right away and these cases are now done and gone and behind us. The game that they would play in that case is, I'm going to play the lawfare shot clock. I'm going to slow all these things down. I'm going to gum up the works, and I will make it so that the bandwidth to get what needs to be done if we're going to right the ship impossible by the midterms. And then by that time, by July 15th, going into the midterms, anything you do judicially at that point in time will just be simply branded, you're just using the law abusively to attack your enemies. So this is where I get to as to why they kept their powder dry and why they kept everything pretty much sealed, except for embarrassing a few folks like Obama, Comey, Brennan, those types of folks. And you can argue it with me, but now that we're this close to July 15th, I think the president is going to declare that the government is incapacitated. And I also think that the Joe Kent resignation is a first in a many step series of events to get to that place. But I could be entirely wrong. I just think if you're going to get it done at this point in time, it's going to get turned over to the military. It's going to be on a tribunal basis. And the only evidence that I have to back that up is the fact that just go on sam.gov and look at all the contracts that went into all those expansions of courtrooms, cells, and all that stuff at Gitmo. So
I would love to see that.
at.
I would love to see that, but the danger in military tribunals.
There is a danger, but the country's in danger.
Well, let me finish that thought. The danger in military tribunals, especially related to Trump. Trump is a terrible judge of character. Terrible. Everybody around him are douchebags. I mean, his why Jared Kushner is anywhere near the administration escapes me, because the guy is just an opportunist and he's a douchebag.
Well, what about Lutnick?
I don't even want to get started on the whole, I lived next door to Jeffrey Epstein, but I didn't see anything. Okay, Sergeant Schultz. The key thing here is, if we're going to do military tribunals, there has to be guardrails on the left and right of that, of where do you start, of where do you stop, and how does it end? What does done look like? Meaning, who do you roll up? And to go back to your point, Trump had 4 years and some very smart people working on who are the key people in government that we need to get rid of on day one in order to save the republic. Kash Patel told me in an interview almost 2.5 years ago, we have the key people picked out. We've got deals made. We know exactly who we're supposed to take out of office. We know exactly who the insurgents are. We've got the A team. Okay, I took him at his word. And look at where we
Well, now
are.
that young man, I don't think that young man had a conflict problem until he took office, quite honestly.
I don't even want to ask what that's all about because I gave him
met
the
him. I
benefit.
met him right beforehand, and he was fire, piss, and vinegar. And all of a sudden, no, Epstein killed himself.
Yeah,
no,
so
we got to take a look at that stuff.
so was Bongino,
Right,
and
I know.
So
But look at that. Look at that. Bongino went out of his way to flame spray Joe Kent, like immediately, like within hours.
That's a controlled asset is what that is.
That is exactly a controlled asset.
Yeah, that's a controlled asset. And look, General, I one of the things I appreciate about this crew is that we can have a debate about this. And look, I don't mind being wildly wrong.
This is tough stuff.
I've been wildly wrong about predictions in the past, which is why I don't do that anymore, because I've been wildly inaccurate. But in this case, I'm in the place now where most Americans are. And that is, I'll believe it when I see it. Until I see something happen.
I got to jump in there.
Oh, please go ahead. I mean, look, I don't mind being the realist in this.
Your comment about the DOJ doing nothing is not true. When those indictments on Comey, that was not due to the DOJ. The court, the judicial piece of that is what destroyed those. And I think, again, it is illustrating the firing of the one in New Jersey. They are illustrating the fact that our judicial branch, including Roberts, is compromised.
Yeah.
And you have to do that if you're going to justify moving to a military tribunal. You can't just go out of nowhere and go, oh my gosh, look, I'm going to do this. You have to expose a Bozeman. You have to expose the fact that the entire judicial branch, look at all of the pedophiles that are being released. Look at what Gavin Newsom is doing in California with the judicial branch out there.
I don't disagree with any of that. I think you're spot on there. That's
you have to
true,
expose, and that's why I am insistent on looking at things like they really are. It's not that they're not doing anything, and it's the same thing with the FBI. While everything that you guys just said may in fact be true about the FBI, you can't say they're doing nothing. They have rolled up hundreds of thousands of terror cells that have been embedded in the United States. With border closed, they have hit all the crucial cities in rolling these people up. There has been a shit ton of money laundering cases that have been brought against the infrastructure of the narco networks. So there's, again, you have to put the pieces, both things can be true. We think of only the kingpins when Kash Patel says we know where these things are and we're going to hit the ground running. All of us think that all of the kingpins are coming down first. You can't do that. They have embedded assets in the United States that have to be taken out before you go to the kingpins, because you can't afford having entire areas of the United States destabilized.
Yeah, but that's why we say when somebody says, oh, the CIA has this. Okay, which CIA? The FBI has this. Okay, which FBI? Because my understanding is when you start to see productive things like the Atlanta raid and that type of stuff, okay, those are hand-selected agents that are going to be ready for that op. These are organizations that are in a state of civil war with themselves.
Hold on, somebody special's calling in.
Uh-oh.
Hello?
Hey, Tommy, I can hear you.
How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Good. How are you? Joe Kent, this is Colonel Watkins, this is General Blaine Holt, and this is Colonel Steve Murray. I've been, as we've all been going on for the last hour and a half, just defending you and everything around you, but I figured I wanted to get it straight from the horse's mouth. Real quick, because, Joe, you've known me for 5 years, and all I do is kiss your ass, and I don't ask any questions of substance. I wanted to just kind of give them each one question or something. As you know, not live, pre-recorded, all that good shit. Steve, you first.
Oh, sure. Put me on the spot. So, hey, Joe, I just want to say I appreciate the fact that you did that the right way and that you're out front. Let me just say that up front. That says a lot about who you are and what you are. The question I have is really boy, I don't want to tie you up for 20 minutes, but the short answer is, you talked about in the letter, you talked about that we didn't have any indications of a nuclear program. And you've seen all the congressional nonsense on Capitol Hill since you dropped a letter. Have you changed your position on any of this, or have you been coerced to change your position? Is a better question. And you don't have to answer that if you don't want to.
Oh no, I mean I haven't. I mean I came out pretty publicly, so most people in that realm are avoiding me like the plague. But I saw the testimony. I saw the intelligence we did before the annual threat assessment hearings last year and this year as well. And so, I stand by what the DNI put out. I believe in both sessions. I think she's still. I've only seen clips of this one, but I mean, she basically said that Iran's not on the cusp of building a nuclear weapon. That previous before the Ayatollah was killed, that he was holding his fatwa against nuclear production, and then post Midnight Hammer that they were even further back, like that their ability to produce a nuclear weapon was obliterated, / seriously degraded.
Steve.
Sorry, I was
No, you're good.
muted.
You're good. He's driving. He said he has 5 to 10 minutes, so we're burning through some of it. So I just want to make sure each of you guys get something to ask. So
yeah.
Colonel Watkins.
So, Joe, hi. I'm an Air Force colonel. I've spent the last 3.5 years doing research into events that has gotten us into wars since post World War II, and primarily the CIA's role in most of them. Starting with Ajax, PB Success, and Forward. I'm very interested in even long term having a conversation with you about how the manipulation of intelligence in the past, to include intelligence like for 2003, which I was at CENTCOM over 9/11, so I'm very familiar with a lot of the stuff that happened in the lead up to 2003. How the intelligence is crafted as opposed to gathered and analyzed. Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, a good deal. And this is kind of what I was getting at my letter and then my longer form podcasts. Essentially in this case, I feel like the 18 intelligence communities were like in a rare form of agreement, because a lot of times it's back and forth. But in terms of like, did Iran have a nuclear weapon? The 18 intelligence communities actually agreed. We had a pretty good idea of what their plans were they attacked? And then also, basically from the time that President Trump came back in office, and especially after the 12-day war, we had a really good idea of what the Iranians' escalation ladder looked like. And so to come out and say that like there was an imminent threat, that's just false, like I said. But then also the way that the Secretary of State and President have laid it out, that like it was an imminent threat because the Israelis were going to attack, not because the Iranians were planning a sneak attack like the day after we hit them. So the manipulation happens, I think, basically through by short circuiting or just getting around the national security process and the interagency process, and having the Israelis, because they have so much access to senior decision makers, to senior policy makers, to legislators, having those key leader engagements, essentially liaison engagements, go right to the source and say, hey, actually, we have some really good intelligence. It just hasn't hit the intelligence channels yet. So let me tell you, they're really moments away from a bomb, or they're about to attack you, or they're about to develop a new, ballistic missile capability that can hit the continental United States. Before the IC even has a chance to say yes, no, maybe so, it's already right at the senior decision makers' desks, or right in their heads, and then that's parroted in the mainstream media by all of the Israelis sympathizers, I guess, for lack of a better term, in the mainstream media. And to my knowledge, in my lifetime anyways, the Israelis are the only ones that are really capable of this.
They're definitely
Sure.
more capable of it than other countries, that's for sure. Yeah, I find
I'm
that.
sure others try, but
Yeah.
And General Blaine, do you want to hop in?
Yeah,
here?
just real quick, Joe, I'm a big fan. It's good to be connected to you. So you here's the two variables I'm looking at. You quit honorably. You did it right. I can in good conscience stick with this, and you posted the letter so nobody could warp your words. That was great. Almost instantly, we find out that they're going to launch some sort of investigation on you, despite the fact that they haven't investigated. Let's see, anything to do with Epstein, J6, COVID, anything.
right.
But you're the guy that needs an investigation. So that looks a lot to me like retribution. And then when I look for the string of retribution, I go back to the very, very reasonable place where you were at after Charlie Kirk was assassinated to say, I don't like this. I want to investigate this further. You're going down the pipe. And all of a sudden, the FBI blocks you and says, oh, no, you won't be doing that today. Let's explain this to you. So if you could tell me, what is your sense of things with retribution? Why would the big hand come out and spank you so rapidly if you weren't over some sort of target at least, or onto something? It just seems extremely underhanded that you were stepping out of the playground and they're trying to wing you on the way out.
Yeah, certainly. So as far as the investigation stuff goes, you guys have all been in service. If there was truly an investigation, they would have pulled my clearance and they would have put me in some sort of a prohibitionary status.
Nope.
And so that didn't happen. Until I chose to walk out, I was the director, I had access, etc. So I believe strongly that the FBI leaking, they're accusing me of leaking, but the FBI leaked that I'm under investigation to members of the media right before the Tucker Carlson interview came out. That was just a media game, and I don't even think the FBI actually leaked it. I think this is like the White House communication shop or some other communication shop being like, hey, let's just leak to the media right now that Kent's under investigation. That's the most likely course of action. The second is the retribution, like we're all familiar with. The worst example, I guess, is probably what happened to General Flynn. So my guard is up for that. But until I see the FBI kind of come at me in a more real way, I'm not challenging them to. I hope they don't. But until I see that, I just kind of view it as a diversionary tactic by the media wing of this. Yeah,
that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
I would agree with that too. Yeah, and by the way, great job on Tucker. I mean, you said everything that absolutely. I think all of us have said, probably better. And what you said is exactly what I would say 75 to 80% of the public actually believes. So nicely done on Tucker, man. Nicely done. And by the way, I could tell you that there's a lot of SF guys in my on my team for my show, and I can tell you every single one of them's behind you, bro.
Across the board.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Joe, thank you for calling in, brother. And just, I mean, not that it matters for me, but, I've known you for 5 years, dude, and you've been nothing but not only extremely cool to me, you came on my show before I even had 1,000 subscribers on Rumble, no less. And you've been in touch with me, and I always point to you, and I think I guilt trip you at times. And I tell you, you are the shining example I hold up when people start blackpilling. I always hold up you.
Really cool people, Tommy.
So, Joe, I love you, brother, dude. Thank you so much for calling in, man. Thank you for doing what you're doing, and it's an honor to know you, and it's an honor to look up to you. So, Joe Ken, thank you so much, sir.
No, I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the chat, and Tommy, we can do something longer later on. Just hit me up.
Yeah, I'll text you right now. All right, brother.
Thanks,
thank you so much. All right, bye-bye.
Well, that was a surprise.
Yeah, any other surprises, Tommy?
Yeah, you suck.
Else you're gonna pull out?
Yeah, thanks for
that wasn't planned.
First.
That wasn't planned.
Call Cash. Call Cash.
Call
Cash. Yeah, let's
get Cash on the phone.
I've been texting him since it happened. I haven't heard back from him, and I texted him earlier. I was like, "Can I have you for 5 minutes?" And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, I was gonna end this show and have him on. And then I was like, I'm with 3 military people that all love you. And he's like, yeah, I'll call in. And I was like, all right. So
Yeah,
That was not
good,
at
man.
all planned, but that's probably
That's
the coolest
good.
thing I've ever done on the show. It's probably the coolest ever flex I've done on the show. Um,
I know the balance here, though, too, by the way, is the balance is getting him to reconfirm what he was saying before, but the other side is letting him know there's a lot of people behind him, right?
And
It's easy to feel like you're by yourself when you're in that sea of
That's
bullshit.
the second I found out, I texted him, I got your back unconditionally. And he's a Christian. I said, you did the right thing. The Lord Jesus Christ has his hand on your shoulder. And I said, and more importantly, literally everyone has your back. And you know, all the people I interviewed, the Delta to the
Cool.
ground branched. I'm like, they all across the board have your back. And so, and the cool thing about Joe is none of that even matters. That's who he is. It doesn't matter if you don't have his back. He's gonna fucking do it. And that's just,
Yeah. Well, that's what you're supposed to do. Is you're supposed to follow your convictions, right?
yeah.
Yep.
God, he's so fucking cool. And it's just, I mean, not to just go on a complete, fucking,
Hey, Steve, my worry about the swamp is most of them are following their convictions.
Well,
I play for China. I play
okay.
for Iran. I'm a Lockheed
Bad-
Martin guy.
Bad example.
bad example. But yeah, man, I mean, it just, and again, not to beat a dead horse, but that's like who he is. That's like, that guy is the guy I met 5 years ago. Like, hey man, yeah, what's up? Love to have you on the show. Like, doing his show, and there's like his fucking cats running around in the background. Like, that's who he is. And of course, you're always gonna have biases towards people you like, sure. But this is an exception where it's like him and guys like Dr. Malone and Dr. McCullough, who I've known since before they ever went on huge shows. I'm like, this is who they are, guys. Like they have no incentive to talk to me. I'm doing a podcast out of my apartment, but um,
But that's why I think it's so important for people to understand. If you would have um, the fact that he's been consistent in saying what he said, and people say, "Oh, well, yeah, he was talking about Iran several years ago." Yeah, we were all talking about Iran. Did he have the access to the information in when he was making comments about Iran? He had access to the same information when he was running for Congress that we all had. He wasn't read in on anything. And so you cannot, especially with people that go in and out of, if you'd have talked to me 10 years ago, I was still in the matrix. I
yeah,
would have been defending George Bush and the stuff that I seen. But when you start doing research and you educate yourself and you are in a position to see things that are much broader than most other people's perspective, not only do you become more wise with time, but you also start appreciating how all of the other pieces fit together. That comes with intelligence that you gain over time. And so to go back 5 years and compare something, although he's very consistent, but even nuanced positions will change over time as you gain more information. And I think people's you can just see the latching on of narratives, and it's like a dog with a bone. They're not going to let go of this little piece, even though that little piece is based on absolutely nothing.
it's the other thing.
It's
People
something.
screenshotting stuff. They're like, look what he said 5 years ago. I'm like, dude, I always bring this up on the podcast. I look at things that I said with a full-throated defense 18 months ago, and it's not even that I've changed a little bit. I'm like, that was just wrong. That's factually wrong, and I'm retarded.
Well, something that's salient that he said that is, and I need to go back a little bit. He talked about how foreign agents have direct access and a lot of access to the administration. When Obama came to town in 2008, this is one of the reasons why I retired when I did. When Obama came to town, the first thing he started doing is he started replacing general officers and he started replacing SESs across all of government. And I was
Some
heavily
of us replaced ourselves.
yeah, and he was actively replacing SESs in DISA and in CISA, and I worked with Jen Easterly at Fort Meade when she was under Keith Alexander, and one of the things that I saw while I was still in the IC was the fact that they were streamlining all the intelligence coming out of China, whether it was direct source or indirect source, was all going to DC, and it was being taken out of the field. Like if I was in classified systems in Pacific Command, I had very limited access to anything related to China. And that struck me as odd. The other thing that I saw was a lot of streamlining of stuff about Russia and about Ukraine being sent straight back to DC and taken out of the field offices. Part of what I think I heard Joe say was I saw direct access intelligence that contradicts everything that the administration is telling you, and I can't say it without saying it. Because he said that, we didn't see indications of any of this. So I could tell you from, 10 years ago that he probably saw the real source intelligence that said, yeah, this isn't happening. And he's like, wait a minute, what are we doing? Because that was the piece that was missing for us, even when we did the surge in Iraq. Like we were seeing stuff moving into the stands, for lack of a better word, from
Right.
China and from Russia that were going into the hands of the insurgency in Iraq, and we couldn't talk about it. And what I heard is a guy just say, "Hey, I saw all the intelligence, and none of that supports anything the administration's telling us." If I heard that wrong, let me know. But that's what I heard.
Well,
and I was going somewhere with that, and completely lost my train of thought.
I would kind of parse that just a little bit differently. It didn't support, we have to go now. That to me came across very clear. But that shouldn't surprise anybody that actually listens. Both Rubio and Trump said exactly the same thing, that their hand was forced by Israel.
Yes.
And saying that, they both told you that. And so again, in his resignation letter, he's highlighting a fact that had already been established by both the Secretary of State and President Trump.
Right.
And then all of these people, again, I just can't help but going back to what General Holt said. It does seem like it's an exposure operation that is exposing this influence that some people are still wedded to the narrative is not there. It's clearly there. And I want to address one point that he talked about when it comes to and your point, Steve, the crafting of narratives where you skip echelon intelligence, where it isn't out in the field, it isn't being analyzed by impartial analysts. It's being pipelined directly into DC to craft narratives. And that's what's most notorious about the CIA. They don't work off of actual intelligence that has been filtered through analysis. They work off of narratives, in many cases, that they create or that they cherry pick from sources that they have overseas to justify an action they're already going to do. And obviously, I couldn't have brought it up in this forum, but the one that's most critical is the Beirut bombing in the 1980s. Israel had intelligence that bomb was being built and that the van was being modified to transport it to the Marine barracks. They knew it was going to happen. Did they share that intelligence? No. And you know why they didn't share that intelligence? Because they didn't want to burn their source. So they're very selective about what intelligence they pass on and what they don't. And the commandant of the Marine Corps was so pissed off at Israel in the way they were harassing our Marines on the ground, literally trying to bait them into shooting the IDF troops there. And then the IDF troops out of nowhere pack up and leave and expose their southern flank. And the commandant wrote a letter. So, Blaine, you can verify this. You've been in the Pentagon. You understand how this works. There's going to be multiple meetings of the Marine Corps commandant talking to the SecDef Weinberger. Hey, this is going on. Hey, this is going on. He did not get any action from the SecDef. The SecDef knew this was going on. He was so fucking pissed off, he wrote it in a memo. He made it a matter of record. And for the Commandant of the Marine Corps to put in writing something for all times, it's right out on the internet, you can go find it, that the Israeli Defense Forces were provoking the Marines and harassing them on the ground in Beirut. And for it to get to the point where the Marine Corps Commandant puts that shit in writing, you're way past the pale on that one.
Oh yeah, service chief, and you can't go find a service chief today that will do that. You can't go find a combat commander today that will go do that. And again, this gets back to, we were kind of in the transition state back then of general officers at a very high level who were becoming politicized very quickly and picked for cocktail party skills, not picked for warfighting skills. But back in the day, this is why in the Air Force, we had embarrassing moments on the Hill with a guy named LeMay. LeMay, piss and vinegar on a flight line, not so good in front of a TV camera.
No.
And that's not why you wanted him. In the 60s, had he been a little bit older of tooth, Robin Olds could have gone on to be a damn 4-star general, one of our fighter pilots. But what happens over time is we have gotten rid of commandants who would stand right there in the breach and say, this is horse shit, and I'm going to the president and the SecDef and put this on their watch. I just don't think you'd find that today. I'd be very, very shocked if you did. And so that gets us to Joe Kent, because Joe Kent basically, at a minimum, what he did was he got up on the train and went and pulled the emergency brake. Yep. And now everybody's got to go look at it. And let's be honest, his very high senior level position in our government, still not a high enough level where he gets to just go call the president anytime he wants. He doesn't get to be seen or heard by the president in that role. So what he is essentially doing by pulling the emergency brake is making the president look in his direction and saying, I am going to be a problem for you guys for at least a little bit. And I am dragging your eyeballs into this thing, because that forces a conversation between Tulsi Gabbard and the president. And I think that gets us a little closer to what the op is, because that conversation doesn't involve Susie Wiles.
Well, he definitely gave the president out to get out of the war. He gave him the option, which I think was monumental given the timing.
I just don't think we can now, Steve, until the regime is gone. There's no reverse gear. You can't leave the mullahs there, because they'll just be nothing but a revenge state for the next 30, 40 years.
Well, all they have to do is wait us out. They don't have to win. They just have to survive and wait us out.
I understand. But there's going to have to be more pager days and more steady diet of slammers until basically the mullahs are not a 10% population demographic of Iran, maybe more like 3 or 4. It's going to go that way. And then the other part is, you really want to piss off the 90 million Iranian people who are, it's like, just a little bit more and we'll take this country back ourselves. If we abort that now, we really will leave you don't leave a patient like this open on the operating table. You're going to have to see it through.
I know, but the unfortunate part of that statement is that we're hunting scuds when it comes to the mullahs and when it comes to the leadership, because they've dispersed and they're decentralized, unless we have some damn good intelligence of where they are on the ground.
We do have some very good intel assets on the ground. Is my understanding.
So we also have technology now that you don't even need to be on the ground. This is a conversation that I find fascinating, because most people don't talk about it. Every single Starlink has 10 to 15% of their capability that is walled off for military use only. And the capability of that, where literally I was watching, I went down a rabbit hole a couple of days ago about the advancement of the ability to, like, literally to the point where you can lock on somebody's head and be able to identify who that person is.
Right.
We have capability that allows us to do things that we couldn't possibly do when we were hunting scuds in Iraq.
We got gonculators, man. You know we do. We got gonculators.
We got what?
And we have gonculators. We've got discombobulators. We've got molecular vaporizers. There, I said it. It's out there. We've got molecular vaporizers. Okay?
P63
Is everybody happy now?
space demodulators.
Yeah, that's a hydrogen bomb.
Discombobulators. We have discombobulators.
Yeah, and to me, the thing I kind of come away from this is it's, and for obvious reasons, it's such like a hot button because it's Israel, but replace Israel with just any other. Call it fucking Italy. Call it Moldova. None of us would even bat an eye. We'd be like, yeah, hey guys, the decorated war guy, he's saying this is another forever war, and we probably shouldn't be sending our sons and daughters to die in Italy. And most people would be like, yeah, it's probably right. That's why people are like, well, we're not doing on the ground in Venezuela. Like, fuck Venezuela. Like, sure, go blow up the capital, but we're not doing that thing. When it gets around it, it just turns into this. It turns
That's
into
why
this,
I think
this
this
magical
is.
light.
That's why I think this is.
I'm in agreement with you. I'm getting.
Yes, I know. That's why I think, and the response of the people, I think it's just so important to have this conversation right now. And the way you have this conversation right now is to do exactly what's being done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's best case scenario. You think you would have thought Trump would take that out though? You would have, because you're right. Rubio said it. He said it.
Yes.
It's a very absurd thing to just. Colonel Watkins, what do you think? What's your take on that then? Like, let's say it is an opt to do this. Why the blinding spotlight on Kent, but not Rubio or Trump?
Because if you the the opposing force, they know that they can't attack President Trump. They know that they can't attack Rubio because of the positions they're in. So their moving and saying that was like, oh shit. But Kent is a completely different animal for the very reason that the general just articulated. He's this guy that is low enough to attack and open all barrels in his direction, and try to beat back that narrative that cannot be aimed directly at Trump because he's too far out, as far as the limelight goes. And so the Laura Loomers and the Levins of the world can't launch this attack against Trump or Rubio. They can launch this attack against Kent. And by doing that and directing all ammunition on him, you're just sitting back with a checklist going, they're in it, they're in it, they're in it, they're in it. And there has been people that's come out of the woodwork as a result of this, or, like assets being activated or whatever terminology you want to use. And some of those have not exposed themselves before.
All right, I think I got it.
Or a judge that they had attested, I'm not here. We did the first plus 40 people immediately. We had already been registered to vote. So we can't say what the total number is. I can't say if it's TPS or not. But most certainly this happens. There's this.
I muted him.
Nice fail. Nice fail.
What the fuck was that?
He's listening to something else.
I hope it is.
I think what's interesting is I want to switch.
Yeah, the Reaper has Carrigan and Target. Do you want me to hit him? You want me to take him out? Yeah, no, he had Ken. Yeah, no, he's more valuable than we thought.
I want to switch gears a little bit because I want to talk through what if Iran is a catalyst for a bigger operation or a bigger a bigger piece here, because and I go back to what this that thing I posted in the chat the other day. If AI is telling us that there's specific events and Iran is a trigger for those events, maybe there's a bigger operation going on right now that affects. Because one of the things that sticks in my craw and it is salient to the conversation is the fact that they talk about how and this goes to your concept of friction, Colonel Watkins. You keep talking about they've created borders to create friction.
Yes.
And one of the things that comes out of all the NGO conversations.
General says he has to head now. Pulling hard stop now.
Oh, it's fine. Newsmax is more important than me, General. I see how it is.
We can keep talking now.
One of the things that's salient about his conversation, the guy's name's Jay-Z he's on X, and he's a data guy, and he put into his AI all this information, the NGO documentation, everything else, and it sped out specific time periods. And he said that Iran is a trigger for us to pull out of the Middle East, for us to pull our bases out. He references some act that was passed in 1942 about overseas bases and insurance and how the bases are insured for whatever. Not sure how much of that is true. But I think it's very interesting when you look at the timeline of what's happening. He talked about the AI spit out something about how they're going to reduce the friction and they're going to put everybody in this universal high income. Both Elon Musk has talked about that. Sam Altman's talked about that. And I can't remember the other guy that talked about it, but they've all talked about this transition to a better time. And maybe this is just the cover for that. Because didn't Trump just say there was a 30-day reprieve for oil coming out of Iran? Was that this morning? I think I saw it on X.
He is allowing, like he is Russia, them to ship oil so that China isn't starved off. But to the point about, I watched that video, Steve. That video made the space or whatever that guy was in, that made my head hurt. First of all, I don't care what AI it is. AI only gives you, and it's only as good as the questions you ask it.
Or how good it's taught. Yeah, I agree with that.
So if you are trying to craft a narrative, you can get AI to tell you anything. He makes the point of the insurance of these bases and stuff like that. Our bases have nothing to do with insurance. Do I think there's pieces of it, and that's why I'm very wary about listening to people craft narratives. There's enough pieces of what he was saying as far as the regional concept of, the Western Hemisphere and the European Hemisphere and the Asian Hemisphere. They refer to that as ARC, America's, Russia and China, basically trying to usher in the peace era that Trump is actively trying to do. But you also can't separate that, and this is where I think people get outside reality. There's two forces that are at play right now. And you can call them red and blue forces, but the nefarious people have basically the same concept. If you go back to the Fabian Society, they were quite open about saying that they wanted the world divided into Americas with the US in leadership, Asia, although they waffled between Japan and China, but also Europe with Germany, and excuse me, leaving the British Empire together, having an Arabian Empire, and basically using Africa as a slave colony. and to feed into all of these other areas. And, they were the people that gave birth to the eugenics movement. They're the people that, through Cecil Rhodes, created the London School of Economics. And so that's the nefarious people. That's the one world government. They wanted them, to use EM's words, the high table. There was going to be a representative for each of those geographical locations.
Geographic economic zones. Yeah, I know what you're. I've read all that. The reason why I'm referencing this is that I've read most of the NGO stuff. I've read most of the WEF, most of the WHO, most of the Council on Foreign Relations, a lot of their documentation. It all says the same thing, right? And you can make the correlation. I just put it out there for the simple reason that if it's plausible and it's possible, you need to look at it and consider it as a part of the overall picture, right? Doesn't mean that it's true,
Right.
but it means that elements of it could be true. And you're right. When that's the narrative piece of that is exactly where I stop. Like, dude, this could be a plant, this could be 4chan, this could be Q stuff. Yeah. But the one thing that I thought was interesting about the conversation is the fact that, so I had heard a timeline 30 years ago, like, and I can't say where it was, just say it was a highly classified environment, and they laid out a timeline for specific events. Now, there wasn't any conversation about pandemic or anything. They just said that there's a timeline that has been predictively programmed and predictively modeled. That, again, this is the piece that I clued in on in the video, is that he talks about predictive program. I know for a fact that we have had AI a hell of a lot longer than, and I'll say algorithms, let's just say predictive modeling algorithms. We've had those for a very, very long time. And those algorithms are they've been so well trained that they can do predictive modeling. I mean, look at Palantir. Palantir can do predictive modeling and associations based off of your cell phone within seconds. Yeah. They have a dossier. I'm sure they have a huge dossier on me that says flaming asshole. But that said, the timeline that he talked about is very interesting because it's very plausible to what they're saying to us right now, which is there's going to be a time of great wealth and great fortune. And at the same time, EM and I agree that they haven't built a digital prison yet, but they're working aggressively to do it. They're 5 years behind in data centers, which is to our benefit. And ultimately, I think they're going to fail. But I just thought it was interesting that this timeline he lays out, which is the piece that I clued on, that's what I see as well. And if you read the documentation, you see the same timeline that they're marching to. It explains why things are moving so fast, because they're on a timeline that they can't move off of.
So if you look at the Fabian Society and their slow boil concept of gradualism in order to do this so that all of those pieces can fit in. And I think that was the problem that I had with it, is he's conflating the red guys and the blue guys. So there's nefarious players out there.
Absolutely.
And to me, to your point about Iran being a node, I do think they are. They are one of the entities, as well as Israel, that's impeding peace in the Middle East. And they're not the only one. I think there's another node that originates from Turkey as well. And so there are additional things that are going to have to happen in the near future in order to disable the nefarious guys' timeline and allow for the good timeline, if you want to call it that, to fulfill itself. And so you can't possibly leave Iran the way it was, because as far as the friction goes, the strategy of tension, they are and have been used, by the way, by the nefarious people as the counterpart to Israel. And if you're going to eventually address the nefarious forces that originate out of Israel, you have to address the nefarious forces that control Iran as well.
Yeah, and I think the salient part of that, though, in the piece that I was zeroed in on, is that when you look at the timeline, the other part of the timeline that he talked about, which I agree with, by the way, is that there is a time of civil conflict, which, again, take out all the noise of the narrative, right? Because it's funny, you and I clued in on the same thing. That cracks me up. By the way, this is narrative. But what I thought was interesting was, because what I was listening for is I'm listening for, okay, if there's a timeline here, and you're right, he doesn't know anything about the military or how that all works, but the timeline, if you look at the timeline, we've heard now for 3 years that there's going to be civil conflict between 27 and 30, and that lines up with a number of different conversations, not just in social media space, but it also lines up with analysis that's been done at the national level. And I think if we make it through the civil conflict, which I think is we're on the cusp of right now, if we make it through that civil conflict, there's a good chance that the reset that we're all looking for could happen the right way, if that makes any sense whatsoever. That's what I clued in on. That there's a lot of that conversation where you're like, okay, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay, that's not how that works. Okay, yeah, that's narrative. Okay, you could be you could train a trained monkey to say that I got that. But I thought that because I've used AI to do a lot of different things, like review contracts, review multiple contracts, review DPAs, and it does a very good job of doing that. When it looks at language, it does a very good job of that. But again, if you have your own AI, you have to train it to do specific things. That takes a long time. It's like you just throw it in there and say, look for this. It comes out with retardation.
But if you're trying to justify what your narrative is, you have to use the premise that I have this AI and it's all in this little box and I've only put it in. Well, you only put in what you wanted to put in.
Well, it's like Martin Armstrong and Socrates, right? I love Martin Armstrong, but he talks about his program, and he talks about how his program is, super, super smart and everybody wants it. Okay, let's see it. I mean, you've never seen it on screen. He's never used it on a screen. I think it's all right here. So it's the same thing, right? Yeah. So the thing that I guess I'm noodling on right now from that conversation. And look, I look at all kinds of information. I don't take anything to heart to say, yeah, this is completely true. It's just the timeline he talked to was like, man, I've heard this before. Where have I heard
there was a book, and I have it. I don't know where it's at. I'd have to go find it. There is a book that talks about that book used 70 years, not 80, as far as how things replay themselves. And it was a fascinating book of just analyzing history in 70-year cycles of charting your way through that. And it wasn't just using the United States, it was using the world at large. And so that's why I said, I think there were pieces in there that are factually true. There are pieces in there that have been proven out in other works. And then I think there was a narrative laid on top of that. I definitely believe that having done what I've done personally in going back and looking at all of these historical narratives that we have been, and then looking at the underlying factual pieces of it, I've gotten a lot better at being able to recognize them playing out in real time.
Well, I think what's interesting too is that, and that's a good point, because you just jogged my memory, that one of the things that is apparent is that our adversaries are 5 to 10 years ahead of us. They have long-term planning, long-term things that they've already war gamed out that they're playing out right now. And as we saw with, COVID was a test to see how much control they could exert. I think wholeheartedly. And COVID created, exposed all the Karens, right? All of the brown shirts that would report their neighbors. Yeah. And when you look at that perspective, you look at how far in advance, because they were planning COVID back in 2014, 2013. I mean, that's 8 to 10 years ahead of when it actually took place. And fast forward down, they're 5 years ahead of us. So they're in 2030, 2031 right now. And we're still in 2026 trying to read the indications. So what I'm hoping happens in all this, let's say 1% of what the guy said is true in that timeline. If 1% of that's true, the one piece that I definitively know that AI can't account for is unintended consequences, right? You know as well as I do that the moment you step off the line of departure in any operation, you toss the plan over your shoulder because Murphy shows up and the enemy gets a vote. And I was amazed in Iraq doing information. I was amazed at how adaptive and how simple the enemy could use very simple things to disrupt all the countermeasures we put in place. They did some of the most creative shit.
I think that's where we're at. I think we're their enemy. And they may have that stuff mapped out, but I think there's good guys out there that also are doing exactly the same thing and are equally agile at countering their operation. That's just where I'm at.
No, I agree with that. We agree on that. I think that's part of the reason why I brought it up in the first place is that if this timeline is real and this is the timeline that, because one of the things that we've all talked around, but we've never agreed on is what's the reason the timeline has been accelerated? Because you can see the acceleration over the last 4 years. Like, why are they accelerating the timeline?
Because of Trump. That's what I was going to say about COVID. That timeline got accelerated. It was not supposed to be deployed when it was. I think that this other force over here has thrown a monkey wrench in many of their timelines, and I think the more they succeed in mucking up that timeline, the better off we're all going to be. Because I don't think COVID was supposed to be deployed until after Hillary's second term. And that was going to be the final lockdown. That's when the prison camps, whatever, all of those things were going to come about. And they were going to pull off a Chile or a Brazil or any of those other nefarious government overthrows where they're going to have their dissident list. There was going to be a January 6th in the future where they use the computer systems, Palantir and that type of thing in order to create their dissident list, to search all of the neighborhoods and all that other stuff. I think all of that got compressed. And as a result of that, it got exposed. And now you're dealing with a completely different perspective in the American populace because of your point. They exposed all the Karens. People now know that their government will kill them. They know that.
Well,
they know that their neighbors are not necessarily going to be there they know what it looks like when you go into a restaurant and you have brown shirts in there telling you can eat outside, but you can't eat inside. And
it's the stupidest shit in the world.
You can wear a mask from the door to your table and then take the thing off. I mean, it completely shifted the polar axis of America by exposing that when they did.
But there's people that are still blissfully unaware that are
that percentage.
Oh my God, it's so bad. It's like,
you can't save everybody.
Oh no, but I just the lunacy of that was like,
I know you can't save everybody.
How can you not see the lunacy of that? Like, yeah.
You can't save everybody.
But your point's well taken, right? It's we're seeing the downstream. And one of the other things that I think precipitated COVID was they had to accelerate the plans because the repo markets were blowing up. And when they did like 3 weeks of over $800 billion in repo markets every night.
One of these events has some financial aspect to it.
Yeah.
But also the election. It was to justify mail-in voting so that they would have easier access to the voting. And that's why I don't buy this whole narrative of outside influence into our elections. Are there other nefarious players that don't live in the United States? Well, we've proven that unequivocally that yes, there are. But you can't do any of that stuff without the complicity of the people inside the United States. And they're looking the other way while it's happening.
I agree, because CISA's job is to protect government networks. That's their job. And why is CISA building overseas? Why were they during the Biden administration building overseas offices and staffing overseas offices for election monitoring? Like, okay, that's as far as I know, we have regional cyber fusion centers that are set up to do that for both the military and the government. Why is CISA building those things? Why were they building those things during the Biden regime? And I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think that that's a whole rabbit hole we could go down and spend 2 hours on. But you're right. Nothing happens here on the ground unless somebody's complicit and allows it to happen and gives them access to it.
Correct.
There's a whole apparatus in place. And look,
it wasn't a foreigner trucking ballots into Pennsylvania. That wasn't a foreigner. It wasn't foreigners.
Somebody on the ground.
Yeah. It wasn't a foreign company that produced voting ballots. It was an Arizona company that did it illegally. So that whole narrative, as far as me, just falls flat on its face. But anyway,
we got till June to see how that's going to bear out. Because that's the drop dead point for ballots, candidates, etc.
Well, I have another show in 15 minutes. And Colonel, are you making that?
Yes.
We gotta do back to back. I abused Colonel Watkins, and Steve, sorry for throwing you on this. I didn't know he was gonna text me back. I've been texting for the last week, and I just figured everyone in the world's texted him, and he got back. He's like, I can hop in.
No, it's cool. I would ask him the same question. Like, do you still stand by what you said?
I panicked. I was like, Steve, you go first.
Yes, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Steve was like,
hey, he's used to it. He's the low-ranking guy on the totem pole.
Go make coffee, Colonel. Yes, sir. Roger.
Yeah, I'm used to being a low-ranking person. So
he's like, what do you think about this weather? Joe's like, all right. But yeah, that was awesome. I'm gonna clip that part. I have another show, so I can't do this right now. But I'll clip that part out specifically and put it up first. And you guys can all say you met Joe Kent. That was hands down the fucking coolest thing I've ever done on this podcast, and it's the coolest thing I ever will do on this podcast.
That's the coolest thing I've ever had happen to me on a podcast.
It'll never happen. I've peaked. That was it. I'm glad you guys were with me. We were all
top of the apex.
We were all at the roller coaster. We all snapped our picture, and it's just an entropic slide to nothingness now. So we'll wrap this up, guys. Thank you both, and General. Everybody go in the description, links, podcasts, Substacks, Patreon, Twitters, Rumbles, blah, 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 blah. And Colonel, I'll see you in like 10 minutes. And it'll be up later. And guys, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
All right, guys, take it easy. Stay safe, everybody. Thank you for watching.